Good to be here. I'm of Lycos fame, maybe. I don't know if Lycos fame or infamy, but I'm a venture capitalist now. So the problem you have, Drew, is you let Andreessen give a pitch last night, so I have to do the same. Andreessen said he was about 200 feet across the road. We're about 180 feet across the road, if you're interested in that, so it's a short little hike. Andreessen's been around for 5 years. At Highland Capital, we've been around for 25. We have, Andreessen has $3 billion under management. We have about $3.5 billion under management. So just want to do a little compare and contrast. We are a classic venture capital firm. We invest across the board in tech and consumer. Some of the consumer names you might know that we've done are not traditional from VC. We invested in brands such as Lululemon and Pinkberry and City Sports and David's Tea and Jay McLaughlin, a whole bunch of very classic traditional consumer brands. We also do an awful lot of very traditional tech consumer investing. So things like Rent the Runway out of New York and Handybook and Beyond the Rack up in Canada, a whole bunch of interesting commerce and consumer-facing activities. The thing that's going on, though, for sure in our business is mobile is changing the world, and that's what we're going to talk about now with this great panel. There's a complete changing of the landscape taking place. Our companies across the board, if they have a consumer-facing product, are trying to understand the mobile strategy and how do they capture it and how do they monetize that. And it is not easy. It is really tough, as you all know, capturing that fleeting mobile consumer. So with us today, to my immediate left, we have Mahi De Silva, who we just heard from at Opera Media Works. Jeff Dachis, the CEO of the Dachis Group of Razorfish fame, having founded that previous. And my new best friend from last evening is Eric Berger, who's the EVP of Digital Networks at Sony. So we're going to spend a little time talking about the platform wars and what does that mean, because as you just heard from Mahi, there's a two-horse race in this marketplace, and that might not be a healthy thing. If we start to look at really what happened to have an environment that's monopolized in its presentation by a couple of providers is a tough thing. I mean, you go back to the web. The web was the ultimate open platform. It was controlled by no one, but supported by everyone. If you think of what happened with web interfaces, it really isn't a standard. It's the open standard that exists. That's not true when we start to look at mobile devices in this two-horse race. And maybe I'll start with Jeff in the middle and to say, do you think that concept that I just described creates for a challenging consumer experience?
I think consumers are going to be adopting whatever technology they can to do what I'm calling the democratization of the tools of self-expression. Individuals have the power to create, produce, distribute, and monetize their ideas in ways that we've never seen before. And it's creating a shift from mass communications to a mass of communicators. And I think it's less about platform per se, about iOS and Android, because consumers are going to continue to adopt the new technology that happens every year, every couple of years, and more about what are they doing with that technology, how are they consuming and expressing and sharing ideas, and how are those forms of communication monetized. And so for me, it's less about Android versus Apple as a good thing or a bad thing, and more about how many people are we empowering with these tools to allow them to express their ideas for free worldwide in HD on the go. And that, I think, creates enormous opportunities for everybody.
Right. But Mahi, is it tough for an app developer out there or someone that's trying to create the mobile website to try to refine that for multiple different operating system environments? And so if I'm a brand trying to establish my presence, is that a big challenge for me?
I think it is a challenge today. I think there's not just the versionitis that's out there. It's the adoption curve. You know, the fact that in iOS you have a bit more controlled and curated model, while on the Android side you have more fragmentation. And developers don't have a single API to code to. If you're a media company, you're not necessarily having the same team build your iOS version and your Android version, so you've got different expertise. It's a bit of a mess. Mm.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty mind-boggling as to how fast this has taken place. You think at how long it took for the PC revolution and the internet revolution to take place. I mean, today there are in the world 1.2 billion smartphones. Depending on who you listen to, there are $5 to $6 billion. I'm sorry, not $1 billion. There are 5 to 6 billion cell phones. More people in the world today have cell phones than have running water. So it speaks to really what we're dealing with. And this has all happened over the last few years. But of course, that brings us that we have this massive consumer base, but we think that how do we monetize that, and how do we break through in that? So maybe a question for you, Eric, is you think about these multi-platform worlds that we're dealing with. Is it essential for a brand to be thinking about monetizing across multiple platforms? Meaning, do I have to have my consumer on the iPhone or on the phone only, and a different consumer on the web, or do I have to be working to blend that all together, Eric?
So for us, there's two sides to our business. One is I run digital for Sony Pictures Television, so we have 120 networks around the world. So those networks are migrating to digital platforms through, in conjunction with our satellite and cable partners, through TV everywhere. So we're doing a lot with them, and the feeling there is you need to be everywhere. But the other business where it's absolutely true is a business that we run called Crackle, which is a completely over-the-top video service. And there we feel it's imperative to be on all connected digital platforms. I mean, that's really what the service is all about. So obviously the web, but it can't just be iOS and Android on an ad-supported service. It has to be Kindle and Nook and BlackBerry and Windows, because we need to reach these consumers wherever they are. But in addition to that, you said multi-platform. The connected TV now is the #1 streaming device in the home. It's beat the iPad, it's beat the phone in terms of some research that we just got last month from Maggot and Company. So Xbox, PlayStation, all the smart TVs, Roku boxes, it's imperative that we're on all of these different boxes.
Jeff, you seem to be having a view there. If I was reading your body language, you have something to add?
Yeah, I just think that you're looking at complete fragmentation and in every form of the user case, and so and that's going to continue to be the case. There's going to be new technology minted, new platforms minted, new social networks minted, and to some extent, I don't really think I don't think there's one thing to bet on. I think you have to bet on it all, and you have to find technologies that will enable you to connect with consumers wherever they are, whenever they're there, with the things that are most interesting to them.
And how do you think about, or how should we think about the decisions? Do I want a mobile web experience? Do I want an app experience? Or do I have to have both? And why?
I think you need both. HTML5 is going to be a sort of common denominator for a lot of stuff, but like Nike, they're not even on Android. They have an iOS experience that's great. That's the place they want to be, and that's the thing that's working for them. So I think it's going to be both.
And Eric, where do you principally talk to your consumers?
So,
is it mobile web or app?
It's apps for us for the video service, and you'll see that with Netflix and Hulu and Amazon. That rich, very brand-centric video experience today works very well on an app. And of course, there's security issues as well that the studio cares deeply about. But the app provides some other great services that you don't find in the open web. Merchandising in a store and working with all of those different partners that I mentioned before actually works to our advantage, because we can do really interesting marketing programs with them to get the app featured around particular pieces of content. It also gives us an opportunity to do notifications. When we do an app upgrade, it's a chance to talk to consumers and tell them a little bit more about what's going on as well. So there's some really great advantages actually we find right now to providing that branded app experience.
Can you deliver as rich an experience in the app, Mai?
I think you can actually deliver a richer experience in the app. You have more flexibility in being able to use all the great things on those devices. The camera, the gyroscope, the accelerometer, the microphone. HTML5 just doesn't deliver that same richness in a mobile web experience. But I think most of our customers end up doing both. But what we see is there's about a 3-to-1 ratio of engagement on the same property with an app versus the mobile web. The consumers are choosing to use the app instead of the mobile web experience.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, any great brand apps that stand out to you?
Great branded apps. Most recently, honestly, I've been using the Time Warner Cable app. I just sort of recently discovered that I can basically watch live TV and program my DVR and do a bunch of things. And for me, I was actually really surprised at the rich level of functionality and capability that in-app experience had versus doing the same thing on the web.
So I get that from a standpoint of TV and cable, where it's so integrated. But what about from a traditional consumer brand? So that's what I'm trying to get at. Does an app there really cut it? And
I've also been using most of the Nike apps, which for me add a really sort of great connected experience with all the things that that we talked about earlier today. Yeah.
Right. I think the point what I'm trying to lead up to, and you guys might not agree with this, so I'd like to hear your thoughts, but Nike's a great example of someone really figuring it out and doing it really well. But for the most part, consumer brands, the apps are gimmicky.
Yeah,
It's a little bit of not quite sure what's there. Let me play a game. Let me fool around with something, and it's really not there the way it needs to be. That engages the consumer and speaks to them. And trying to keep that consumer engaged in an app isn't an easy thing, because if you look at the number of apps we have on our phone today, I don't know how many we have on average, but probably 40 apps per person is the latest numbers I've heard on a phone. Trying to keep those that you're using more than that first day is tough. So when you start to think about that, is it your experience that for today, that's an accurate statement, Mahi, or not?
Well, I think it depends on how you define that envelope. Like an example for me is MLB at bat, right? As a sports fan, the experience that MLB at bat gives you as a consumer, whether you're in the ballpark and watching live, or you're at home watching it on a live broadcast, is a super enhanced experience. You know, you get to see where did that pitch cross the plate. You get to see all the stats that you want. You know, there's all this sidebar commentary there that really enriches your experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the same thing could be said for, let's say, toaster strudel pastries or whatever.
That's the question,
and,
right?
And honestly, I don't think brands yet have started to think about a user experience that involves perhaps nutrition or meal planning or what, you know. And I think they've experimented with some of that stuff, but for the most part, not really integrated into the lifestyle or the user experience or the way somebody's consuming those products. The brand, you know, for toaster strudel pastries, I'm just making that up, is selling stuff, you know, via the grocery store. It's not creating a, you know, breakfast experience, and I don't think the brand's even thinking about what they do that way, and therefore an app isn't really anything that's gonna be useful to somebody like a Nike Fitness app is, you know, to me, where I might be buying the shoes, but really I'm trying to change my life and work out and get more fit and get motivated. And when consumer brands start to think of themselves more in that sort of immersive user experience mode, I think then apps with utility will start to be more prevalent. But right now, I don't think that's the case for those CPG or consumer brands.
But sometimes these apps, you just need to get out of the consumer's way and let them find and experience good content. So for us, it just has to be a seamless experience. We choose more of a programmed format than some of our competitors, but you got to put content in front of people or let them choose and find their content, put it in a watch list, allow them to pick it up, come back on other platforms at other times, but to some degree get out of their way.
Right. So full disclosure, I'm an investor in a company that's in the category I'm about to ask about, which is a company called Session M that has a rewards and loyalty network. But if you think in mobile, is back to that, is that gimmicky, or does that, Eric, work as a concept?
We have Session M implemented in our applications, and it's been fantastic. I mean, the engagement that we get from consumers, I mean, we have data showing that it's higher engagement, they come back more often, they spend more time on the application than those that aren't engaged with the Session M product on our service.
Right. So how do you think then, just more broadly, maybe not about Session M, how do you think about loyalty and that combined mobile app environment, and how do you keep a consumer with you? Anyone?
I mean, again, this is one way that we're trying it, right? So everything that you can do to, you know, people use the word gamify, you know, an experience and get them to engage or want to come back or incentivize to watch more content or to explore more deeply or to sample more, you know, works for us. Mm-hmm. I mean, other ways, you know, I talked about notifications or getting people to do a watch list and then entering into a dialogue with people through once they've either registered directly with Crackle or using Facebook is another way that we engage with consumers.
Yeah. What do you think, Mahi, is when you think about the mobile experience is really broken? I mean, what are the things you look out there and say, man, this is a problem. I can't understand why we're living in that environment.
So I think as it relates to digital advertising, we have a fairly disparate set of identification technologies, right? So the web and a lot of the web, the desktop browser-based web advertising is built on cookies and a lot of reliance on third-party cookies, and that just doesn't really exist in a consistent way on mobile. So I think one of the things that the industry is struggling with is how do you create that common identifier, not just on mobile itself, but these are personas that straddle multiple screens. It's the desktop, it may be a smartphone, it may be a tablet, it might be a connected TV. So that's something that really is missing today, and there's a lot of companies that are trying to be that glue. We haven't seen a single solution stand out.
No.
I was going to say, for us, the issue is, mobile had measurement issues and interactive ad issues for a while that have worked itself out to some degree, at least from a brand and an agency perspective. But the connected TV is where is that next level of where we're finding the most challenging in bringing TV advertising along. Clear third-party measurement, interactive advertising, some of the things that you get on the PC and on the mobile platforms haven't quite worked out there. Now we've introduced some interactive ads, this ad called C-Roll, that's an interactive ad unit across all 3 platforms, and we've just implemented ComScore to give unduplicated reach across TV, mobile, and online, so it's a step, but there's a lot more to come. And then I think you get into issues of AirPlay. So when you're watching something on a tablet and it shows on a TV, or now you've got Chromecast or Microsoft Smart Glass, when you're using a tablet but it's showing itself on a TV, how does that translate to measurement and advertising issues in the coming years? It's going to be a hot topic.
Are you tracking that consumer that's online and on mobile as one person, or do you recreate them once you see them on mobile?
No, we provide unduplicated reach across the different platforms. And now we can do it for TV with this new ComScore study as measured by a third party. We could always do it ourselves, but agencies are looking for third-party measurement. So we'll have that data beginning in January. We'll be the first ones to have that.
Mm-hmm. And how important is geo around all of this?
We're getting more and more campaigns that are looking for geo-targeting, which we can do. So it's out there for sure. Depends on the brand, obviously.
We talked a little bit last night about, it wasn't described this way, but Andreessen talked a little bit about the Internet of Things when he used his Fitband as the example. But we're active investors around the Internet of Things, which means this will ultimately be billions of connected devices. Everything will connect to the Internet. It will be beyond belief. If we start to look at it as a retail environment, we understand when we will understand at some point when the consumer is picking up our item on the shelf as opposed to somebody else's item on the shelf, and be able to speak to them in a very direct way that can happen today. Medically, my doctor will know if my heart rate goes up in a way that he doesn't know today. I can already control, with companies like Nest and SmartThings, control all the HVAC in my home and the lighting in my home from a remote environment, but these are pretty important. Are any of you working at all around the Internet of Things, especially as it relates to a mobile device? Do you have any experience there?
I mean, there's nothing in market now, but we look at it because we think the context is really important for the types of entertainment that you may want. So just the fact that you're sitting in the DMV would be an interesting time to get a notification that you can watch a movie. Or you enter a Starbucks and you've got some time, it would be interesting to put in front of them. We have a show with Jerry Seinfeld, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. How about an episode of watching while you're killing some time in a coffee shop? So that type of context out in the world is something that we think is very interesting from a marketing perspective and a nice convenience for consumers. So we're looking at it.
I think talking to people where they are when they're there with the things that they're interested in really can only be done when informed by data sets from a wide variety of places, and Internet of Things data is just going to be one more set of contextual data that I think is going to enable marketers to better engage with consumers.
Yeah, the data. The science behind the data, though, becomes, when we start to look at the Internet of Things, becomes infinitely more complex, and trying to manage that is important. I think we heard a view earlier that data scientists might be hitting the unemployment line. I'm not sure that
I disagree strongly with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I share that, but who knows? We'll find out as we look out there. The other interesting thing is, we carry these phones in our pocket that we have for ourselves, and the thing that we lose sight of is that what this essentially is, it's a supercomputer. Absolutely. Especially when I have all of these communicating with one another. You heard last night about the traffic apps. Well, that's exactly the way this works, is that my phone is communicating in real time as is somebody else's, and it's telling me what's happening and building me a real-time traffic pattern that what's take place. The unbelievably compelling presentation that we saw earlier this morning from Adam Bain and what they did with Bluefin Labs and Deb Roy's whole organization is very much that. It's this supercomputing that's taking place on our phone as we all connect and reach out. Uber is another. I mean, it's changed the way we travel. It's changed the way that I travel for sure in terms of what happens. I know it's changed the way you travel as well, but in terms of what takes place. But it's crazy. There's a company in New York, Handybook, that provides for home. They're nationwide, but they provide for home cleaning services and plumbers and electricians and everything in your house with an instant booking. But that concept that I'm referring to that takes advantage of this supercomputing. How do you see that changing advertising, if at all, Jeff? Or why did you?
I'll take it. Again, this shift from mass communications to a mass of communicators, you have the ability to share your ideas worldwide for free in HD on the go. And that's never really happened before in the history of mankind. And so now you've got all these people that are creating all of this content, all of their thoughts and ideas, all of their gluten-free cupcake recipes, and their profound ideas that are going to change the world. Everything from the most banal to the most revolutionary. That activity is where people are spending their time and attention consuming content. So kids are spending more time consuming that type of content than they are consuming mass media products. And if brands want to start to figure out how to talk to people where they are when they're there with the things that are most interesting to them, they need to start thinking about the content and conversations and information and context in which people are producing and distributing and monetizing their own conversations. And the mobile device, the supercomputer in your pocket, is the thing that's empowering all of that.
A couple of real quick final questions, and then we'll wrap up because we're out of time. But many of the handset manufacturers are threatened by the Android Google presence, and they're looking to develop their own OSs right now. There's 3 or 4 initiatives that are taking place globally. Does that develop, or do you think this stays a 2-horse race for the foreseeable future? Mike?
So I think that even though we have Android and iOS, there's many flavors of Android. So if you think about all the Android devices that are shipping in China today, they're not connected back to Google. There's literally hundreds of millions of devices that have a different flavor of Android. So that's going to have a big impact.
So that compounds this challenge of developing effective product for consumer in a big way.
It certainly does. But I also think that as the web standard starts to evolve, our parent company Opera produces a browser. It's very, very popular in the emerging markets. As web standards evolve, I think you can get closer to an app experience on the mobile web. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we look forward to in the coming future.
Great. Well, we're out of time, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you all for being here today, and thanks very much, everyone.
Cheers.